Tonight on Currents News, the final journey of a beloved Brooklyn pastor, Father Jorge Ortiz Garay, is going home.
Father Jorge was a very special priest.
Here in Elmhurst, the need for food is great, but there's also a great spiritual need. I'm Jessica Easthope with How Catholic Charities is teaming up with a local parish to tackle both.
The pandemic's impact on Catholic academies and parish schools in the Diocese of Brooklyn. What's next? An exclusive report as Italy moves into a new phase of living, plus a tribute to a man whose ministry touched so many lives by the crosses he created. The news starts right now. Our top story, the casket carrying the body of Father Jorge Ortiz Garay is bound for his homeland. The beloved priest lost his battle with coronavirus in March, the news coming as a shock to his parish community. Good evening, I'm Emily Druby. Christine Persichetti is off. Father Jorge is believed to be the first Catholic priest in the United States who have died from coronavirus. The pandemic has made transporting bodies across borders very difficult. Now, after weeks of waiting, his family in Mexico may soon get the closure they've been desperately waiting for.
Father Jorge passed away, and here we are, starting the process of getting him home to his final resting place.
It's a bittersweet moment for Vincent Levien, the director of external affairs at DeSales Media Group. Levien formed the DeSales Emergency Task Force to help organizations in need during the pandemic. He says his team has been working for weeks to send the body of Brooklyn priest Father Jorge Ortiz Garay back to his homeland of Mexico.
Thanks to Monsignor Harrington and Bishop DiMaggio, we literally worked every night and day to run through all the bureaucracy to make sure that Father Jorge could be home.
Levien says the offices of New York Senator Chuck Schumer, Governor Andrew Cuomo, Mayor Bill de Blasio, U.S. Customs, Delta, and the Mexican consulate all played a role in making this happen.
If we got one thing wrong today, cargo, the flight, the manifest, the coffin, the logistics, Father Jorge doesn't get home. How are you?
Father Jorge was the beloved pastor of St. Bridget in Bushwick and coordinator of the ministry to Mexican immigrants. He died on March 27th from the coronavirus. At 49 years old, he's believed to be the first Catholic priest in the U.S. to lose his life to the virus. Father Jorge is known for putting his own health at risk to minister to his parishioners when the virus was starting to spread.
A lot of people, stayed in because they had to stay in. He chose to go out and help people because he knew those people needed the help.
On Sunday, Currents News was there as Father Jorge began his journey to his final resting place. It started with a blessing by Monsignor Kieran Harrington in front of the Scotto and Hire Funeral Home.
That's why this is important today. Yes, to give him respect for all of the work that he did, but ultimately also for the consolation of his mom and his dad, his siblings, his nieces and nephews.
Then a police escort to JFK and out to the tarmac, the captain coming out to pay his respects. With the utmost care, a solemn moment for many as the casket is loaded onto the plane. And then a final goodbye. Father Jorge Ortiz Garay bound for Mexico City, but his legacy will forever live on in the Brooklyn Diocese.
Father Jorge was a very special priest.
That plane flew Father Jorge from JFK to Atlanta. The second leg of the journey will bring him to Mexico City. That was supposed to happen today, but according to Levien, who we heard from on that report, the Mexican government canceled the reservation. We're being told it's been rebooked for Wednesday. In the Diocese of Brooklyn, Catholic Charities is fighting to keep those affected by the pandemic fed. But the church in Queens hosting the latest food pantry event decided to take it one step further, making sure that both the body and soul are fed. Currents News' Jessica Easthope has that story from Elmhurst.
Food is the most basic of necessities. Yet during this pandemic, so many don't have enough.
We don't work right now, so we need some food for my kids.
Luis Espinoza has been unemployed for more than 2 months, which is why he came Friday to Catholic Charities Brooklyn and Queens pop-up food distribution at St. Bartholomew's in Elmhurst. He says he's been missing stability, but he's also been missing something else.
We come every Sunday here to the church. Now all the church is closed, so it's hard too.
Like Luis, thousands of others in the hardest hit communities like Elmhurst feel that same spiritual need, as well as a desperate and growing need to provide for their families.
We will run out of food today. There's no question. We packed for 1,200 bags. There's probably easily 700 more people in line after that.
You're going to stay 6 feet apart, okay? Go straight through.
Catholic Charities and St. Bartholomew's worked shoulder to shoulder to feed the body and nourish the soul.
Today we're doing the exposition of the Blessed Sacrament. We've given out 2,000 rosaries. It's just a reminder that while we need to be socially distant, Jesus isn't socially distant from his people.
Father Rick Buther says so far, more than 60 of his parishioners have died from coronavirus, a loss he's taking especially hard. He got sick himself.
I myself had the virus. Thank God it wasn't too serious, just loss of sense and smell and a lot of extra sleep.
Catholic Charities filled and gave away 1,200 bags of food Friday. Every few minutes, hundreds would make it in and out with days' worth of food. A service designed to help those in need turn a corner.
Feeding the hungry is something at our core in terms of serving the human dignity of every person.
In addition to food and comfort, people were also given information on where to find help. Lists of additional food pantries and where to get mental health services were handed out to everyone in line. In Elmhurst, Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
Go to ccbq.org for a complete list of nearly 20 other food pantries working with Catholic Charities Brooklyn and Queens. Also, there is information available about making behavioral and mental wellness telehealth appointments at ccbq.org, or you can call 718-722-6001. We'll repeat this information later in the newscast. In Rockaway, Queens, shelves at a Catholic food pantry are full thanks to a big effort this weekend. More than 2,100 bags of food and $5,000 in donations were given to the food pantry at St. Mary's Star of the Sea thanks to generous Catholic donors. With the new supplies, 130 volunteers distributed 500 bags of food to those in need. The Catholic academies and parish schools in the Diocese of Brooklyn will remain closed through the end of June. While the buildings are shut down by the virus outbreak, distance and digital learning will continue for the rest of the academic year. The Diocese School Superintendent Thomas Chadzuko says that way students will be challenged to learn with a faith-based academic program. And to ensure online learning goes well, grateful parents picked up iPads at Our Lady of Perpetual Help Catholic Academy in South Ozone Park, Queens on Friday.
This is really, really nice. Wow.
These devices are going to help their kids participate in the distance classes. DeSales Media Group is giving the free iPads to academies across the diocese. The technology boost is needed when parents work from home and their children want to learn and families run out of tools. At the same time, some kids don't have another way to get online.
He doesn't have a computer. He doesn't have access. So here's this poor kid, through no fault of his own, falling behind because he doesn't have the equipment to keep up.
While teacher Anne-Marie Smolinski is using one student as an example, it's an issue for many. And with so many people losing their jobs these days, some families simply can't afford to go out and buy an iPad. During Friday's distribution, while all the distance rules were followed, there was a lot of happiness as 145 iPads were given away. Disappointing news for the Diocese of Brooklyn. The famous Giglio Feast in Williamsburg is being canceled this year. The 117-year-old tradition has brought tens of thousands of people to the streets outside of Our Lady of Mount Carmel Church each July. But Pastor Monsignor Jamie Gigantiello says because of the coronavirus crisis, this year's celebration is off. That will be the first time this 7-story, 4-ton tower hasn't touched the sky since World War II. Meanwhile, in Italy, the number of people who've died from the virus is at the lowest level since the crisis sparked a nationwide lockdown 2 months ago. On Sunday, the government reported 174 new deaths. That's the smallest toll since stay-at-home orders were imposed on March 10th. Overall, nearly 29,000 Italians have passed away from the disease, and the country of 60 million residents has confirmed more than 210,000 infections. Today, Italy is easing up on parts of their coronavirus lockdown, the longest in the world. The hope is that the move will reboot the country's crippled economy. In an exclusive report from Rome, Melissa Butts has the story that this new phase of Italian life is being welcomed, but it's also causing confusion.
After 55 days of lockdown, Italy's phase 2 has finally begun. It's marked by mandatory masks, open parks, restaurant takeout, and of course, social distancing. Masks and gloves are Italy's new normal as it enters into phase 2, allowing 4 million people to return to work. Public transportation has changed as the metro has certain areas blocked off and buses are allowed only half the normal number of riders. Restaurants are now open for takeout service for the first time in 2 months. Italians, deprived of their morning ritual for so long, drink their morning espresso in the street. While happy to serve, restaurant owners say they feel abandoned and in the dark.
Arrabbiato, rammaticato.
I'm angry, upset, and demoralized. We weren't told how to sanitize, what to do, what products to use, both for us and our clients. We don't know anything. We've been left in the dark. Athletes, on the other hand, are overjoyed as parks have reopened. Young and old alike pass alongside those who cut the overgrown grass. It's a sense of freedom. But freedom doesn't mean tranquility in the face of the coronavirus or agreement with this new phase. I'm honestly more worried than I was before the lockdown. I hope it will be better. With all these people out, maybe we haven't understood. It's like phase 1, but with a few differences. During the lockdown, tourism dropped 68% in Europe and 96% in Italy. It's estimated that from July to September 2020, no travel bans will cost 25 million tourists, making Italy's financial situation even tighter. It should get slightly better as shopping, museums, and exhibits reopen on May 18th and restaurants and hair salons on June 1st. While it's not how Italy was before the lockdown, it's a slow and steady step in the right direction. In Rome, Melissa Butts, Currents News.
China is accused of covering up the severity of the coronavirus while hoarding medical supplies for themselves. The Chinese didn't reveal the extent of the outbreak and how contagious the disease is, according to the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. They found that while China downplayed the virus, it stepped up imports of medical supplies and cut off exports. At the same time, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is saying there's enormous evidence the virus originated in a lab in Wuhan, China. The FDA is giving emergency approval to a COVID-19 antibody test that boasts near-perfect accuracy. Swiss drug maker Roche is claiming the new test has been proven to be 100% at detecting antibodies in the blood, which would determine whether someone has immunity to the disease. Here are some more headlines. The Center for Migration Studies is highlighting the role of nearly 20 million immigrant laborers, saying they are essential critical infrastructure. Pope Francis is urging access to virus vaccines and treatments be guaranteed in every part of the world. Costco is limiting the sale of meats to its customers. There are disruptions in the meat supply chain. There's a lot more news headed your way. He did it for love, planting crosses at the scenes of tragedy. Now he's returned to the Lord. Making certain our priests are ready for the test of the coronavirus pandemic, there's special help being given to them.
The Shepherd's Care is a response to the personal needs of priests, the spiritual needs of priests.
The Supreme Court is making history today. The justices are hearing cases in a new way.
Now you can help us put your faith in the news. The next time you capture a newsworthy event, send us your pictures or video. It's easy. Go to netny.tv/send us, and you may see your submission on Currents News.
You You've seen his work before on Currents News, handcrafted crosses planted close to some of America's worst tragedies. Greg Zanis performed these acts of love. Now he's returned to the Lord, but not before receiving a mile-long tribute. John Garcia has the story from Aurora, Illinois.
His ministry has touched countless lives over more than 2 decades, and many of those lives are represented here in front of his home today. Greg Zanis has terminal cancer, but instead of waiting for a somber funeral to remember him, his family invited people to drive by and wave to Zanis while he's still around to appreciate it. Police are directing a line more than a mile long of cars waiting to drive by. Linda Regnier brought the cross Zanis made for her cousin when he was killed 4 years ago.
We've loved Greg. We've known that he's traveled all over the United States and it brought light in the darkest moments for people, families.
Crosses for Losses was born out of his own personal tragedy, and he started making crosses in his shed to honor victims of violence, first near his Aurora home, but eventually to places like Columbine, Newtown, and Las Vegas. He was one of the first on the scene to deliver crosses when 10 children were killed in a fire in Pilsen 2 years ago. And his crosses outside the Henry Pratt Company after a mass shooting in Aurora is an enduring image. He has placed more than 27,000 crosses since he started 23 years ago.
Greg does not understand what he means to people, and this is the perfect way for us to show him how much we love him.
Zanis retired from making crosses late last year without mentioning his illness. He asked the group Lutheran Church Charities to take over. They are finding Zanis left a huge mark.
Who knows the number of lives he has touched? Just an incredible man.
That was John Garcia reporting. Greg died early this morning from bladder cancer. He was 69 years old. We'll keep him in our prayers.
Of course, we are all understandably deeply unsettled by the threat of this virus. But you see, like Jesus, we can also confront the pandemic.
Giving priests the spiritual strength to face the coronavirus pandemic head-on is the goal of A Shepherd's Care. The program by the Sacred Heart Institute provides videos for the clergy during this crisis. The director of that institute, Father Lachlan Cameron, joins us now to talk more about it. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Emily. Nice to be with you.
Now, Father Lachlan, we've seen priests around the country embrace new forms of evangelization because of the virus. Online masses, drive-through confessions, videos for catechesis. They're on the front lines in their own way. So how does A Shepherd's Care help them in their ministry?
A Shepherd's Care is a new initiative by the Sacred Heart Institute in response to the pandemic, as you know. Sacred Heart always interested in the ongoing formation of clergy, especially for the Archdiocese of New York, for the Diocese of Brooklyn, and the Diocese of Rockville Center. That's its mission. When we realized early on that things were going to look very different for us as priests and deacons, we decided to switch gears. And really, the Shepherd's Care is a response to the personal needs of priests, the spiritual needs of priests that they might have in this time. So a place where they could hopefully be fed as they look to feed their own people.
So important. Now, you've offered advice in the program to priests on how to communicate digitally. Can you tell us some of your favorite tips?
Sure. A lot of it would deal with just the very basics of setting themselves up. I know for me, too, I'm also a chaplain at a university, so streaming masses, things of that nature, all new for me. Little ways that priests would be able to transition to a new platform, whatever that be, for masses, for rosary, just for even spiritual messages that they were giving to their people. So Monsignor Jim Vlon was someone who's able to help us with that. A few other priests who are a little more tech savvy than I am, able to give some content. And again, just helping priests, deacons step out into a new area and hopefully do it well to continue to transmit the gospel in these days.
Now, the program hosted a virtual retreat during Holy Week with Brooklyn's own Monsignor Thomas Caserta. What added benefit does holding retreat give as opposed to just separate videos?
That's a good question, and we were grateful for Monsignor Caserta. He was so quick to say yes to our invitation. The theme of the retreat, he was able to carry over 3 days, about 20 minutes for each of the conferences that he gave. And really, it's an opportunity for the men making the retreat to spend some time with content, with questions that are being posed, with reflection, prayer, all of those things. And I think, too, the fact that there's the sense that you're making this with others, even if you don't know who they are. It was in those first few days of Holy Week, this opportunity, which is so important for us whenever we're on retreat in that kind of setting as a group, to be together in it, that we're praying for each other, that we're striving to grow closer to the Lord in it. So rather than just it being random things that you might find, which you probably could find online somewhere, address specifically to the situation we're in, with, again, the opportunity to space it out yourself in the course of those days.
I mean, it sounds great, but can a retreat really work virtually, since the whole point of going is to be away from your normal settings?
I think it can. It's certainly different. It's not what we're accustomed to. And there is, without a doubt, a benefit to being in a new space, in a new place. But I think it's a good reminder to us, as well as priests or whoever we may be, making a retreat, that, we can live differently, even in the circumstances that we find ourselves. It takes a discipline on our part. It takes, a spirit of recollection, of entering in. But it's possible. Ideal, maybe not, but certainly possible.
Father Lachlan Cameron, director of the Sacred Heart Institute, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Emily. Be safe. God bless.
The U.S. Supreme Court is making history today, hearing oral arguments over the phone. This is the first time that's ever been done. The justices will hear 10 cases over the next 2 weeks. On Wednesday, they'll take up the Little Sisters of the Poor's appeal of the Obamacare contraceptive mandate. The murder hornets are heading our way. The deadly meat-eating Asian insects are known to kill up to 50 people a year in Japan. They're called murder hornets because they wipe out honeybee colonies. The 2-inch-long bugs are now in Washington state, and beekeepers say it's only a matter of time before they reach the rest of the country. Still to come on Currents News, faith is taking on new meaning in the coronavirus pandemic, what Catholics are saying about God and religion. The famed Christ the Redeemer statue in Rio de Janeiro is getting a new look. It's a message for everyone. As they live with the pandemic, Catholics are relying on their faith. There's 2 new polls to demonstrate that. The Pew Research Center is finding that 27% are telling them their faith has grown stronger during the outbreak. Fordham University is reporting that among regular churchgoers, 68% are saying their faith has helped them a lot to get through the crisis. Finally tonight, Christ is sending a message to the people of Rio through his Redeemer statue. A mask was projected across the statue's face last night with the hashtag Mascara Salva, or Mask Saves. Health authorities hope the move will promote self-care amid the virus pandemic. And that is Currents News. Before we go, here's how to get in touch with Catholic Charities Brooklyn and Queens for information about food pantries and telehealth appointments. Go to ccbq.org, or you can call 718-722-6001. I'm Emily Drewby. Thank you for joining us, because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time. Good night.